My name is Stuart Horn from New Hope, Alabama. I've been coming to these meetings for 35 years, and I've watched TVA and the NRC over all this time, and I believe that the residents of the Tennessee Valley live under a very serious threat, that both of you basically hold a lot of us. You're responsible for us not having a severe accident here. And I believe that Brown's Ferry is in such a state that it's very likely to have an accident. You know, their early history, they had a very poor track record of safety. I went and got some statistics, and over the time I looked at, there were a reportable occurrence every other day. And a lot of those were automatic shutdowns, scrambling, which thermally shocked the reactor structure and prematurely aged the containment structure. So that's part of the long history of Brown's Ferry. They also had this horrible fire where we almost had a very severe accident. And recently they've had many problems, safety culture problems, which is hard to believe. One specific question I have is TVA now funding their corrective action programs? I read some reporting that implied that TVA was not funding their corrective action program. And that's why there are a lot of corrective actions had never gone forth, because they weren't funding them. Anyway, that's a very specific question. The main issue I want to raise is that now Brown's Ferry is at the end of its design to life of 40 years. It has many components in it that aren't designed to last 60 years. But now you've been approved for a 20-year extension of 3 reactors that have had very stressful lives. One of them being out of service for 20-something years, never should have been brought back into service. There are no tornado roofs over the 3 reactors and the fuel pools that reside above them. The fuel pools are far more dangerous than the fuel that's in the reactor. And they're all perched atop the reactor. All 3 of the reactors at Fukushima, to my understanding, the hardened vents in them didn't work. Those vents are safety vents to relieve the pressure so they don't blow up. So all 3 of them failed at Fukushima and blew up. We have no tornado-safe roofs over our reactors. The hardened vents failed. They were an after-fact addition to these reactors because they had a very poor design record. Anyway, that's another long story. The fuel pools residing above the reactors is a very horrible circumstance. They should be removed from above the reactors and stored far enough away from the reactors in case the reactor explodes, the hardened fuel doesn't get spewed all over our countryside here. Basically, to me, TVA really needs to shut down Brown's Ferry. It's a big cash cow for them. They make $1 billion a year off of TVA, is my understanding. And so they're going to be incredibly reluctant to shut it down. But the NRC needs to provide answers. Why any number of these risks seem like by themselves would be enough to, you know, if we have a meltdown here, it's going to be like Fukushima, except a lot worse. Anyway, I would like the NRC to address all those issues as to what they're going to do about them while we sit here and live through another 20 years of hoping that we don't have an accident. Thank you.
Stu, thank you. So I recall from our previous meetings we've had here, you've raised those same or similar questions. I know we responded to your questions about the spent fuel pool and tornado impact on spent fuel pool, as well as the comparisons with Fukushima. And given the time we have, what I'd like to do is refer you back to those answers, and we'll provide those to you again separately. I think the one new question you asked had to do with TVA's investments or monies spent on corrective action program. That's, what TVA spends really on any program is not something that NRC inspects directly. What we focus on is whether the corrective action program is effective. It is required by NRC regulations. They're required to have an effective corrective action program, and we again inspect those areas. You may recall from previous meetings, one of the evidence of that is we had what we call the substantive cross-cutting issue, which is the corrective action program, corrective actions, effective corrective actions is one of the three areas that we define as cross-cutting. It affects everything that TVA and any other licensee does, so it needs to be, again, effective. It needs to work irrespective of what they invest in it. Some people invest more or can invest less, but get just as much out of it. So they have had challenges in those areas. It remains an area of focus. In fact, during my site visit today, I was talking with a senior resident about some issues that have been identified in that area. So it's an ongoing area where I think TVA recognizes it needs to sustain its performance. If you listen closely to Mr. Polson's discussion, he talked about the importance of focusing in that area. So I guess what I would assure you is that it's we recognize it's on TVA's radar screen. It's certainly on NRC's, and we'll continue to look at that. All right. And I'll have Mr. Bartley get back to you on the areas that you identified. I know his predecessor, Mr. Guthrie, I know engaged you on all of those areas, so we'll make sure that you're updated. Okay. Anyone else? Hey, Gary.
You bet. Gentlemen, ladies, thank you very much. Citizens, I was looking at the sign-in list back here in this question about the TVA folks being here. There's a lot of TVA folks here tonight. Matter of fact, the majority of folks in here is TVA, and I guess that's good in many ways. It's good to see Atlanta. Y'all made it out of Atlanta, so I guess this means the interstate's clear over there. If I did, oh, it's not. It's still a mess. Hey, I've got two questions. Actually, before I ask these two questions, I would like to preface with a statement that was made in July of 2013 from an NRC person, Mr. Bill Jones. His comment was, and this was reported to the Alabama.com and the Huntsville Times, everything else was working. It was just the one valve. I would beg to differ with that. Yes, the whole problem with the red finding was the red valve, but it goes much deeper. That red valve and that red finding is indicative of a much larger problem. And I hope that that much larger problem of the safety culture, which you showed a nice slide up there, and if you go to the to the TVA plant, you see the safety culture, basically that same slide at most of the locations, excuse me, around. But the safety culture was a problem, and so was the failure to correct CAP, corrective action plans. Many times there was a problem identified, but there was no effective action, or nothing was done at all until, such as happened, my pet peeve is this control room fire, just that little fire in the control room. But that led to pointing out there was a great deal of obsolete parts and parts that had exceeded their life expectancies, which is one of my questions. Have all those parts now been identified basically better than a year later? Are those parts on a computer program? Does the NRC have a handle on this as far as inspections at the plant in a timely fashion? And is the TVA going to assuring the NRC, of course, as our public watchdog of public safety for the public, are y'all going to ensure that all those parts are properly, that could be obsolete? I call them antiquated. People cringe at that. But the obsolete parts, the old parts, are all those cataloged, and are they going to be replaced? That's a question. The other question is also about the same time, July 2013. It's only 6 months ago now. An engineer came forward, very brave engineer, a whistleblower, and there was allegations which was reported in the national and international press that said basically the TVA management had been altering engineering and expert reports. Now, has that situation been resolved? Was there altering engineering reports that occurred at that plant that a person, an engineer, a root cause analyst referred to? Has that been identified? Is there going to be a follow-up? Being that the NRC is primary responsibility is that of public safety. Is the public going to be informed if there's been an alteration of reports? Because to my way of thinking, I'm an old military guy. You get in trouble, you alter reports, particularly official government documents. That could be against the law. So I'm asking the NRC, as our public watchdog, as the keeper of safety of all the nuclear plants, were these reports altered? Are you going to get back with us as a finality of that situation that occurred and the public was informed of a few months ago? That's very important. My name's Gary Morgan. I represent Best in Matter here, and also I have a blog. I do blogging and stuff and report. And I appreciate y'all. I always let the TVA know that they are appreciated. We may have some disagreements on issues, management issues, and the way things are run or the way power may be, but that's okay too. You know, and we may have some disagreements with the NRC, but that doesn't mean I don't appreciate you, because y'all work hard and no one wants to see an accident. And so if y'all could provide an answer to those couple of questions, I sure would appreciate it. Thank you. I want to give Carol.
Yeah. All right, Gary, thanks for that. I got three, I think, distinct questions, and if I get them wrong, you referred to a comment that one of our colleagues, Bill Jones is the Deputy Director for the Division of Reactor Projects in Region 2, and Jonathan works directly for him. He said everything else was working, it was just the red valve. I'm not sure what the context of that response or that statement was. If he was simply referring to the event that occurred in August of 2009 where Unit 1 attempted to open the Division 1 low pressure coolant injection valve, I can't remember the valve number, and it did not open, or there was no flow, and operators started the low pressure coolant injection in the RHR in the other division, in the other train successfully. If he was speaking in the context of that everything else worked, then that may have been an appropriate statement. If it was a blanket statement that everything else at Browns Ferry is working, then clearly that was an overstatement, and it was not accurate. And I don't believe that's what he meant. I would hope, based on the fact that we did issue a red finding, and we have had substantive cross-cutting issues and a number of findings, a number of performance indicators. Mr. Polson discussed the independent assessment that they've done and the integrated improvement plan and the 5 areas that it focused on underscore the fact that there are multiple areas where Browns Ferry needed to and continues to need to improve performance. So I just provide that response that I'd like to believe that Mr. Jones was speaking of a very narrow question. On the issue of obsolete parts, I can say without question that NRC does not keep a list of obsolete parts for Browns Ferry. I mean, this is a nuclear power plant is a very complicated and massive operation, so that's not something we're required to do. TVA certainly as part of its operations does keep track of equipment performance, and I would expect that at some level it keeps track of that. I don't know if you want to speak to that any more closely.
I'm Dave Delbacher, I'm a senior resident. This question has come up in the past, and I believe what not very good with the mic. I believe what Gary was talking about was some capacitors associated with an unsecured power supply that really is where the very, very small fire did occur. Obviously, they fixed that particular one because they needed that enunciator to work. But big picture, they have an extensive program for components that are characterized as beyond design basis. And as Victor mentioned, we don't keep a list and check the list on an ongoing basis. But we do expect the licensee to be aware of what components are beyond design basis and evaluate whether they need immediate replacement or not. And we do inspect that sort of thing within our baseline inspection program. So I don't think we look at every part or every list, but we do check to make sure that Browns Ferry and TVA is doing their part to make sure their equipment will work and that it won't catch on fire if it's a capacitor issue. So hopefully that helps you.
Additionally, the aging management program review also reviewed the issue with aging components and what the licensee TVA is doing about them. And we also have a requirement called the maintenance rule that is a performance-based system. It's got goals where they monitor the performance of equipment, and if it's exceeding unreliability goals or unavailability goals, they have to take action to fix. So there's a performance-based program that would apply to obsolete components that are becoming unreliable.
Just to speak quickly about what was in the newspapers, and I believe we're talking about management was trying to influence some root cause analysis reports being put out by TVA's root cause analysis teams. The issues associated with that when it comes to having senior managers attempt to influence the reports, the reviews that we have done, and we've responded to the individual, and even information from the individual said that they were being very proactive, and the final outcome of the reports, the information that was required to be in there was in there. The information we received was based on the potential impropriety of management influencing those reports. And there are still some open issues on that which we won't discuss here, but the NRC has looked into those allegations. Okay? Thank you.
Anyone else? It's good to see you again.
My name is Jackie Posey. I live downstream, just a little bit from here on the other side of the river. And I have 3 neighbors who are presently fighting cancer in my little bitty neighborhood that I live in. I'm not sure about the other road that comes down by the water, but on our road, that is an issue. And I know one of them is a previous Browns Ferry employee. But the things of concern that I have, along with the other things that have been brought out, is I got this information online about this, and I'm one of those newspaper people. I have to have my newspapers, but I didn't see anything in the newspapers about this meeting. More people need to know, about this in advance and, you know, kind of what it's going to be about as well. But, you know, I was concerned about that. Also, and this has been a concern of mine in the past, is the warning. The alarms go off, and, you know, I have called 911 on occasions to find out, you know, why are the alarms going off this time? And sometimes they've been able to tell me, and sometimes they haven't been able to tell me whether the alarms are going off or not. And I'm one of these people that I do make calls and try to find out this stuff, but we need to get that information out to the general public better. If there really is an accident and if we really do have to evacuate, some people are going to be real slow getting it together and knowing what's going on. And we need to know about the tests so people will be, you know, more aware and pay more attention to it. And a major concern is the roof on the storage. I don't need to say any more about that. The, you know, tornadoes, we just barely got missed by the tornado that came through, and you all know if it hit Browns Ferry, we wouldn't be here now. And I am an elementary school teacher. I am retired, but I have to have my dose of kids. I spend a lot of time subbing and doing things with the children. It is about them. Once again, it is about the children. What are we leaving our children and their children and their children and their children? We have to do better. And thanks also for really holding the feet to the fire and getting things in better order at Browns Ferry, because I have some loved ones that work there, and I want them to be safe, as well as all of us around here.
Jackie, thank you for that. With regard to the spent fuel pool roof and tornado, we'll give you access to the same information that we provide to Stu, because we addressed that, I know, several in previous meetings, so we'll certainly provide that to you. And also provide you a point of contact, at least for information on the testing of sirens and so forth. As far as newspaper coverage of this meeting, I'm sure my colleague here, Mr. Hanna, contacted the newspapers in the local area. We cannot require them to publicize a meeting, but we certainly provided that information to them in advance. All right. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Henry Jones from Decatur, Alabama, and I realize this meeting is primarily about the NRC's 95003 inspection, but there have been other inspections accomplished at Browns Ferry also, and the one I'm referring to specifically is the World Association of Nuclear Operators. And on January 29th of last year, the TVA talked a little bit about it and issued a statement, and I quote, that this report warned that the combination of human performance and safety system weaknesses results in a high potential for a significant plant event, unquote. And I'm curious if this report has been made public. Also, I'm curious if this report, if Browns Ferry has accomplished the appropriate corrective actions that hopefully change that conclusion. And I'm kind of curious if the NRC has seen that report and if they have found it valid, or in what degree have they looked at it. And also if the NRC corrective actions are appropriate for this report also, and if the implementation status has been accomplished. Also, a couple of questions relative to the NRC work. The Tier 1 actions, and I believe they have been accomplished. I'm curious what definition was for those Tier 1? Is there a technical safety definition of what selected those to be accomplished first? And what was gained from a safety perspective for Browns Ferry with the accomplishment of those 10 action items? And I believe the Tier 2 corrective actions, there's another 19, or I can't remember the number, but there are some more. But what is not being gained by not accomplishing those at the present time? Also, has NRC looked at the probabilistic risk assessment for Browns Ferry units to determine what impact those findings had on the PRA? And what does it mean relative to the NRC's review of those findings to Regulatory Guide 1.174? Thank you.
Henry, thanks for that. I got 3 clear ones. There may be multiple ones in there. We'll, those that we can't answer, we'll certainly get back to you. WANO, for those who are familiar, is the World Association of Nuclear Operators, the sort of the international arm, although a separate group of the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations. Industry group, it's an industry excellence organization that again promotes excellence in nuclear industry. As far as what the WANO report said, I don't know whether, I did not read the results. Did you? We, NRC, have a memorandum, an understanding with the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations that allow us to see some of its reports. All of NRC's are public, so there's no agreement needed. Again, the senior resident has seen it. I'm pretty sure the previous branch chief has read it as well. But that is those are proprietary results that are provided to the TVA, and it responds to those results as it deems appropriate. That statement is something that NRC would, it's unlikely we would make some prospective statement like that in our report. We evaluate performance as it is. And again, as far as it being made public, that's not something that NRC would require. It would be up to the TVA, and I do not believe they'd be inclined to do that, but that would be up to the TVA. You alluded to our NRC corrective actions appropriate. I'm not sure what context you asked that question. It was mentioned in the same breath as WANO, but clearly there's no direct linkage between a correlation. Well, it may be a correlation, but there's no direct linkage between a WANO or an INPO report and NRC corrective actions. NRC actions, if you would, which are the result of our oversight process, and we would engage and require the licensee to develop and implement effective corrective actions to address those issues. So I understand your question, but there's not a direct relationship.
Yeah, what we do when Dave reviews that report is he's looking, are there any issues that we're not currently aware of? And also, are there any issues that are immediate safety concerns that we have to deal with? That's the focus of those reviews.
And then you asked about Tier 1 and Tier 2. I believe you were referring to the letter that we received from the TVA in August of last year that we confirmed in a confirmatory action letter later. It identified 10 Tier 1 areas, and we can speak to those areas, and I think an additional 21 Tier 2 areas. We and TVA proposed, and there was dialogue, there was interaction between NRC and the TVA before it submitted that letter in identifying what those areas needed to be to give us confidence that in the near term, the Tier 1 was characterized as areas that it would address and we felt needed to be addressed in the near term for NRC to even consider any movement to closure of the red finding. The tier 2 items are longer term, more systemic issues, if you would, that need to be addressed, that they're committed to. Again, in the confirmatory action letter, NRC will verify closure of it through our normal baseline inspection process. But we independently assessed each of those and felt comfortable that those 10 were the right ones that needed to be they needed to make progress on in the near term for us to assess the adequacy of closing the red finding. You asked a question about the impact of the finding in the PRA. I'm not sure which finding you were referring to.
Really, I'm looking at them collectively. What does it mean collectively for these to get in place
Okay.
while Brown's Ferry is operating?
Okay. You don't know how interesting a question that is. When we transitioned to the reactor oversight process back in April of 2001, is that right, Joe? 2000. Well, it's formally April 2001, trust me. One of the goals that we had back then was to assess the cumulative impact of. I'm seeing some people smile in the audience because they remember this, of all the issues at plant at a given time, to see what that says about performance. And we realized that it was too difficult. It was not an accurate assessment of licensee performance to do that from a core damage frequency perspective. Having said that, when our colleagues in the Office of Research evaluate a performance issue, for example, the red finding, after we identified the red finding and we caused action because the licensee was in column 4, our colleagues in research assessed that red finding along with everything else that was significant performance issues at the time, including issues in licensee event reports of degraded conditions, other performance indicators, assessing other conditions at the time that were contemporaneous with this failure to see how significant how safety was affected. And that assessment is called the Accident Sequence Precursor Program, or ASP program. And that assessment was done at the time, and they also concurred in the assessment of the risk of that red finding and all the other conditions being a high-risk condition at that time. So we do have that feature of our oversight process where, again, on an ongoing basis, you'll evaluate a significant finding, typically white or certainly yellow or above, and assess other plant conditions at the time just to get a good independent assessment of what the risk condition of the plant is. And I can give you some more information on the accident sequence precursor evaluation, but I think it goes to the point that you're raising.